This message wasn't discovered by chance. The Most High has summoned you to this location at this precise hour and moment. This is not just a coincidence. The timing is divine. For weeks, the signs have been building in your area. What was previously hidden in silence is now coming to light. A man is close to your life. He has moved through a crowd of people with a calm demeanor, saying polite phrases and following his usual routine. However, the storm is building within him, beneath the surface, where the eye cannot see. The truth is in a tremor. What has been hidden will soon be exposed. Earthly consequences will occur in ways that are beyond the control of any individual. Furthermore, the consequences of this moment will be beyond your comprehension. This message, as written, expresses readiness rather than apprehension. There is nothing concealed that will not be revealed, and nothing concealed that will not be discovered and disclosed. Isol. Heaven's chosen ones are never allowed to see the truth fall without prior notice. Be aware if you've felt a sense of unease or tension in your spirit that you couldn't identify. The Holy Spirit whispered to your soul. You couldn't explain your unease, the repetition of events, or the sleepless nights. These were not the results of your imagination. This was spiritual discernment. The fire that lives within you is genuine. Currently, the voice of heaven is communicating with us, urging us to stay alert, attentive, and prepared. This upcoming event will have far-reaching consequences for many people's lives. You have been chosen to observe, comprehend, and act with clarity rather than confusion. I encourage you to express your readiness as you progress toward this sacred awareness. To demonstrate your comprehension and attentiveness, please type Amen in the comments section below. Please be advised that the message has been received, and you are now walking in a state of light rather than fear. Additionally, stick to this message until the end. We will conclude with a prayer that will grant you divine peace, discernment, and wisdom. Why? Because this isn't just a video. This is a divine interruption. A man's journey has concluded. Heaven has observed the actions that occurred in the absence of light. His heart was far from truth as he spoke in silence and smiled in front of others, despite his outward appearance of stability. He has lived in a state of contradiction, expressing one view to humanity and another to the heavens. However, the Lord has seen and heard everything. His gaze remains unwavering. The spiritual alarm was not unjustified. The weight on your mind, the tightness in your chest, the stirring in your soul. These were all indicators. The trumpet has sounded in the heavens, and the moment has arrived. This person isn't who he claims to be. Pretending has ended. Similarly, the prophet Samuel was sent to confront Saul not out of rage, but because disobedience had reached a climax. Consequently, God's messengers have been dispatched to reveal what can no longer be concealed. This person has been in close contact with you, possibly as a confidant, a leader, or even someone who once claimed to love you. However, his actions have narrated a story of deception. Peace. The weight of divine truth is pressing against his mask, causing it to crack, not human hands. Justice will not be served abruptly. It is now readily apparent. Truth has already been determined in the unseen realm, and the natural world is now revealing the decisions made in silence. However, the courts of heaven have already documented the outcome, even if he appears to be walking freely in the eyes of others. Don't be fooled by the text. It is impossible to ridicule God. A man reaps what he sows, states Galatians chapter 6, verses 6 to 7. You may be curious as to why someone of this nature was allowed to be so close. What was the reason behind the Most High's delay in removing him? However, Job, who was both righteous and faithful, was tested without understanding the reason. Until recently, this man's presence was associated with life delays, silent battles, and strange endings. His energy was a source of drain. His concealed existence was an impediment. He wasn't just close to your journey. He was blocking it. And now the Holy One is removing him, not to destroy a man, but to protect a purpose. It is critical that you understand this. The path ahead of you is holy, and holiness and corruption cannot coexist. Clarity, peace, and truth are essential for the next season that God has planned for you. As a result, He is removing the curtain. He is revealing information that you are not permitted to keep. Even though you were unaware of the full extent of the danger, His mercy kept you safe, and His love is now revealing the reason. You didn't fail. You weren't naive. You simply put your faith in the event prior to its scheduled unveiling. However, that moment has arrived. The chains that were hidden from your view are being severed. The burden you carried without explanation is being lifted, and the confusion is being cleared. This is more than just a warning. It's a moment of liberation. It is possible that you do not yet fully understand all of the details. However, the patterns will become clear. The purpose of your previous decisions will be revealed, and when others ask how you anticipated them, you will remember that they were not based on instinct. There were no suspicions. It was God, the one who never fails to protect His own. Allow your spirit to regain peace. I urge you to let go of the weight. The truth is no longer hidden. Angels are stationed throughout your life, silent, vigilant, and unwavering. They have yet to leave their position. They have encircled your home like a fortress, shielded your mind, and watched over your heart while you were unaware of the danger. Even as you questioned whether anyone was aware of your pain, heaven was aware of everything. No, you were not overlooked. You have been concealed for your own safety. There were nights when you wept yourself to sleep, and days when your fortitude felt like sand slipping through your fingers. You believed you were collapsing, but you were actually being reconstructed. So, what appeared to be abandonment was in fact a process of repositioning. You were being moved somewhere safe. You were being prepared for the exact thing that heaven is now releasing. Yes, the exposure. The revelation of the truth is only the beginning. You were never meant to be destroyed by the information being disclosed. It was meant to liberate you. The person who previously obscured your path and drained energy from your life while wearing the mask of compassion is now being removed. His removal has more than just earthly consequences. It's a spiritual awakening. What was previously entangled will now become untangled. Progress that had previously been postponed will now accelerate. The prophet Isaiah once said, "Behold, I am doing a new thing." That new thing is now emerging. Is this not clear to you? The text is Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19. The beginning of a divine reordering used to feel like the end. The sudden shift in the atmosphere, the tension, the resurfacing of memories, and the unexpected appearance of people. This was not an arbitrary decision. This is a real-time spiritual transition. There may be situations in the future that are unfamiliar or even oppressive. You may be tempted to revisit old emotions, messages, or photos that are no longer useful to your future. However, the past should be left to God. What is being cleared is making way for what is sacred. You were never just an observer in this story. You were the catalyst for heaven's intervention. The enemy was unable to contact you, not because of your strength, but because you were chosen. The removal of this individual is motivated by more than just the pursuit of justice. It refers to the concept of space. There is enough room for your next chapter. A space for peace, joy, alignment, and healing that is not about performance. Furthermore, for some people, there is room for the right kind of affection. One that reflects God's character, rather than one that causes confusion. In the coming days, you may be required to remain silent, listen, refrain from reacting, and have faith that what was previously unknown is now becoming clear. Please know that the Lord will defend you. You are only required to be silent, as stated in Exodus chapter 14, verse 14. You'll notice what has changed in the absence of motion. You will be aware of the weight lifted and feel a sense of clarity in the air. This isn't the conclusion. Before the promise, this is the clearing. Heaven is not merely providing protection at this time. It is widening the path for your subsequent ascent. Listen carefully, because this is not just about gaining divine insight. It pertains to the manner in which you transport it. Frustration is the result of revelation that does not lead to action, and heaven did not reveal the truth solely to elicit your emotions. In order to prepare you for the forthcoming events, heaven disclosed this truth. Clarity has been placed in your hands. In a world full of illusions, half-truths, and noise, that is a rare and sacred commodity. The clearness that God provides is a signal. You are no longer blind. You are being requested to behave in a manner that is indicative of an individual who recognizes the sanctity of the path, regardless of the difficulty. Commence with your words during periods of spiritual awakening. Emptiness is not the same as silence. It is obedience. The act of refraining from speaking until the Spirit permits you to do so possesses a sacred power. Look at Mary, the mother of Jesus, following the angel. She was visited by Gabriel, who delivered an absurd prophecy. It is stated in the Bible that she cherished all of these things and contemplated them in her heart. Luke chapter 2, verse 19. She refrained from pursuing an explanation. She refrained from making any declarations or arguing. She merely maintained the phrase. Presently, you are being required to assume that posture. Speak when you are inspired by tranquility, rather than by external pressure. Allow truth to execute its customary course of action. Ignoring your defense, it ascends. Then, quietly evaluate your surroundings. There are individuals who experience a sense of familiarity but are no longer in agreement. Certain relationships are not malicious. Rather, they have expired. In the same way as Jonah on the ship to Tarsus, their presence in your boat may be the primary reason the storm has not abated. Jonah was instructed by God to proceed in a specific direction. He selected an alternative. Not due to their own disobedience, but rather due to the individuals who were passengers on that vessel. All other individuals endured hardship. The waves did not cease until they released Jonah. Jonah, chapter 1, verse 15. Peace may not always be attained through prayer. It originates from the act of releasing. Subsequently, tend to your surroundings in a spiritual as well as physical manner. Eliminate the objects that continue to pull you backward. This could include messages, objects, playlists, gifts, clothes, or any other item that evokes feelings of confusion, heartbreak, or compromise. You are not required to destroy these items in anger or make a statement. Performance is overshadowed by quiet obedience. You are not belittling your past. You are indicating that you are prepared for the future. Just as God instructed Israel prior to their arrival in the Promised Land, consecrate yourselves, for the Lord will perform extraordinary feats among you tomorrow. Joshua chapters 3 through 5. Holy movement is encouraged by a clean environment. In this hour, your concealed weapon is tranquility. You are being instructed to listen to God in the whisper, rather than solely in the fire or the earthquake. Remember Elijah, who fled to the cave in search of direction and feared for his life. The Lord was not present in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire. However, a still, small voice, 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 12, then emerged, and that whisper contained the directive that altered everything. In the tranquility of your mind, ask God, "What are you revealing to me today?" And have faith that the solution may occasionally manifest in the form of peace or a discomfort that is unwilling to be disregarded. Your body, beloved by God, serves as a messenger. The fatigue you are experiencing is not indicative of weakness. It is the residue of having transported something that was never intended to remain. For an extended period of time, your shoulders have carried emotional burdens beyond their capacity. Heaven is not beckoning to you because you are lazy and need to rest. It invites you to participate in the restoration process. Consume water not only to stay hydrated, but also to demonstrate stewardship over the vessel that God has given you. Step outside and let the sun illuminate your skin, reminding you that the sun rises without effort. According to Psalm 23, He gives me rest in verdant pastures. He guides me through peaceful waters. He revives my spirit. This is the restoration. Now listen to this quietly but clearly. You are not responsible for everyone's salvation. It is impossible to avoid the consequences of another person's actions, nor can one obstruct the lessons that God wishes to teach an individual. Even Jesus, who possessed all power, was unable to stop Judas from leaving. He felt affection for him. He referred to him as a friend, but he eventually let him leave. Codependency is the result of unrestricted compassion. Stepping back does not imply a retreat. You are following the order of heaven. Begin writing with purpose rather than obsession. Keep a record of the observations you make. The sudden clarity in previously misunderstood conversations, confirmations, and shifts in atmosphere. These notes aren't just reminders. Anchors are exactly what they are. Heaven was guiding you with precision throughout the whirlwind, which you will be able to see once it has passed. Joseph, for example, endured betrayal, imprisonment, and delay only to one day declare, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. You will make your own interpretation of those words. Allow your prayers to be quiet and focused. God is unresponsive to volume. He is moved by the truth. Please pray for the ability to discern. Please pray for tranquility. Please pray for the strength to comply, even if it is not emotionally rational. Remember that it is not your responsibility to administer justice. It has already started to unfold. So, you are not acting as the judge. You are safe. Keep a consistent daily routine. Clean the dishes. Take a stroll. Complete your assignment. These minor activities are not distractions. Anchors are exactly what they are. Routine stabilizes your nervous system and communicates with your spirit when everything else is uncertain. I'm unharmed. I'm being restrained. I continue to stand upright. In the same way that Jesus continued to share bread with his disciples on the night he was betrayed, there is power in the ordinary when the spiritual world is changing. Finally, drop the expectation of immediate comprehension. This is not your responsibility. Only after the dust has settled does some clarity emerge, and this is planned. God does not try to impress you by giving you a detailed explanation of the entire journey at once. He is establishing trust in you, and trust grows gradually. You are not giving up something significant. You are discarding that which is incapable of following you. The chaos you've been carrying cannot coexist with the holiness that lies ahead of you. Let go with reverence and not fear. You are not being penalized. You are being positioned, and one day you will look back on this unusual, peaceful, and sacred period and realize it was not the storm. This was the clearing. This was the point at which God made room for what you couldn't ask for. You have been quietly and faithfully praying for breakthrough, sometimes through tears that you were unable to express. However, you requested peace rather than vengeance. You requested clarity, not disorder. And now, unexpectedly, your response is arriving through exposure rather than ease. It is uncommon for breakthroughs to occur in the way that we expect. Sometimes it does not appear to be an open door. It appears that a door has been abruptly closed. Occasionally, the dissolution of something smaller serves as the catalyst for the creation of something larger. And now, heaven has begun the process of removing the barriers that have long hampered your calling. This is not just about arresting or removing an individual. The reasons for the removal are discussed below. You are not the target of retribution. You are experiencing liberation. The burden placed on your life by spiritual interference, spoken curses, and hidden manipulation is being lifted. Chains that you could never fully observe have been severed. Heaven said enough, and not because you fought harder. Every story has a moment when the turning point is caused by God's timing rather than the character's strength. Similar to Esther's entrance into the king's court, where she relied on the whisper of heaven despite her lack of awareness of the imminent danger. Moriah informed Esther, chapter 4, verse 14, that this moment could be hers. You were not dispatched to this location to give a thorough explanation. You have been assigned to observe the transformation of the person about whom you have been warned. He has a deeper connection to this story than you may be aware. Although he is not entirely blameless, he is not the only person who is burdened with guilt. The mask is now slipping off another figure, and heaven has witnessed the conversations behind closed doors, the staged narratives, and the carefully crafted lies whispered into the appropriate ears. The person who was not suspected. The woman cloaked herself in innocence, using her charm as a disguise and her pain as a form of entertainment. However, performance does not fool God. The Lord does not perceive in the same way that humans do. The Lord examines the heart, whereas man evaluates outward appearances. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7, and the heart eventually betrays itself when it is full of deceit. The extent of this woman's involvement in the unraveling is far greater than most people will admit. However, the preservation of false images is not a top priority in heaven. The truth is of interest to the celestial realm. In fact, there was a strategy based on both betrayal and spiritual manipulation. Someone was pulling the strings from behind the scenes, instilling control in conversations, fear in decisions, and guilt in relationships. What appeared to be loyalty was in fact entrenchment. What appeared to be assistance was in fact a trap. Unfortunately, that strategy is now unraveling. This is more than just a legal turning point. A spiritual alarm is going off in the unseen. The natural world is simply a reflection of the spiritual realm. Like Elisha's servant who panicked at the sight of enemy armies before his eyes were opened to the heavenly hosts surrounding them. Similarly, you are being given a vision to understand who is truly at work, rather than fearing the events that are unfolding, as seen in 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 17. Heaven has not allowed this delay in your life to be wasted. Your pace was slowed not to punish you, but rather to protect you. It is possible that you felt abandoned. However, the truth was that you were being concealed until the appropriate time. The person at the center of this disarray has made errors. He erred in judgment, but he was also the victim of a more sinister entity than first appears. And now, the fabrication that has been spread about him is being exposed. Not through lawyers or arguments, but through the light of heaven, which penetrates every false witness and destroys every poisoned root. And as this unfolds, it is critical that you remain grounded in reality rather than fear or opinions. Your soul knew something was wrong long before it was identified. You've seen shadows in places that others have deemed secure. You were overwhelmed by the weight of objects that had no name. Heaven has now confirmed that you were not imagining it. This moment, this unique sacred unraveling, is not chaotic. This is a correction. Restoring spiritual equilibrium is currently underway. The power that was once wielded in secret is now being eroded by public scrutiny. And you are being set free not only from a situation but also from a cycle. You are being freed from voices that have distorted your worth, relationships that have thrived on your silence, and systems that have profited from your uncertainty. This was not an arbitrary decision. You are not simply observing this. You were meant to be informed. You were meant to comprehend. Heaven's intervention is not intended to chill you, but rather to warn you. The upcoming event will call into question the assumptions of those who thought they knew what was going on, but it will also validate the beliefs that your spirit has quietly held. There is no need for concern because heaven has already built your escape, while others are only starting to notice the flaws. The scripture claims that you will understand the truth, and the truth will set you free. John, chapter 8, verse 32. This is the freedom that begins immediately. Something within you has been stirring for some time, long before the words were spoken or the situation became tense. Disruptions in your dreams, tone shifts, words that were once warm suddenly becoming cold, repeated delays that made no logical sense, a heaviness in the air, and a shadow behind certain smiles. You did not dwell on your thoughts for too long. You were not imagining anything. Your spirit was discerning what your eyes could not yet confirm. What was previously hidden beneath the surface is now starting to show itself. The fabrications are becoming more difficult to believe. The pressure builds, and God removes the lid. At the center of this unraveling is a man who is not flawless, but rather marked, flawed, yet chosen. His tone has lowered. His pace has slowed. Something has changed in his environment, and it is not a coincidence. This man is the target of a spiritual pursuit, and the person who is carrying out the plot is hidden behind a false light. He's being framed, set up, and conspired against. She dresses with grace as if it were a costume. Instead of seeking God, she has learned to manipulate others by quoting scripture. She doesn't pray for surrender. She prays for the power to dominate. Heaven has observed every moment. The hollow laughter, the untrustworthy tears, the unsettling charm, and now the Most High is lifting the veil. What was previously obscure is now becoming clear, not as a result of your investigation, but because your role in this story is far more important than you initially realized. No, your presence here is not accidental. You're not reading this article out of curiosity. This is a divine interception. The Almighty has captured you in the middle of a scroll because heaven needs your awareness, intercession, and clarity. You are not watching a story unfold from an outside perspective. You are on the verge of a battle, and the conflict is not solely centered on this individual. It refers to the purpose, mantle, and mission that God bestowed upon him before the creation of the world, what he carries. However, when the enemy fails to steal the calling, he attempts to destroy the vessel. As a result, this person was assigned to imitate not only a woman, but also an affectionate assignment. Love was never her goal. Access was granted. Her kindness opened the doors to secrets. His confidence was built on her intimacy. She began constructing the trap as soon as she received the keys. This woman has created a performance that is intended to appear innocent, but is actually based on betrayal, similar to Delilah's strategy of luring Samson into a state of vulnerability only to deliver him to his enemies. Judges 16 tells the story of a man who lost strength after placing his head in the wrong lap. The adversary didn't need an army. He only needed a close friend. This man, like Samson, is currently at a crossroads. His silence had been deafening. His exhaustion has been obvious. However, God is not finished with him. He is not abandoned to destruction by heaven. Divine justice is advancing rapidly. Angels have been dispatched. Archangel Michael guards the gate. God is already dismantling the plan from within, while the enemy celebrates prematurely, believing that the trap is working. The woman at the center of the plot has rehearsed every scene. She can weep in public and curse in private. She has the ability to be humble while also pursuing control. She pays for her silence. Bribery is used to ensure her loyalty. She uses verses to conceal her hostility. However, heaven has decided that it is sufficient. Woe to those who mistake darkness for light, light for darkness, and evil for good. She used sacred language to conceal unholy intentions in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. However, the holiness of God cannot be used as a prop. He is in the process of removing his disguise. This disclosure is not intended to be embarrassing. What's at stake is justice. This is divine judgment. The truth is being revealed not only to impose punishment, but also to protect what is sacred. God isn't just refuting the fabrications. He is paving the way for a path of healing, restoration, and exceeding all expectations. And you are a part of that plan, whether through your silence, presence, truth, or prayers. You act as a container for this moment. You already have insight. Light is in your possession. You have discernment. Your role is more important than you may realize. Avoid second-guessing the unease you felt in her presence. Do not disregard the tension that your spirit senses. Heaven's whisper was that. That was the divine alarm that rang softly within you. And what was once silent is becoming increasingly audible. What was previously hidden is now revealed. Nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, or concealed that will not be disclosed. Matt, chapter 10, verse 26. The woman who stood so confidently will falter as the truth becomes clear. Her alliances will be terminated. Her fabricated favor will become obsolete. Her own exposure will be aided by the stage she set for his demise. Lies were the foundation on which she built her authority. Furthermore, manipulation is not celebrated in heaven. It confers blessings on the truth. However, understand this. Darkness opposes the ascendance of truth. Resistance is frequently expressed as confusion, backlash, whisper campaigns, and sudden cold shoulders. However, remain steadfast. Allow your prayers to ascend as incense. Sharpen your discernment as a sword. You are safe. You are safe. You're not alone. Fear is not the sensation that arises in your chest. It is an acknowledgement. Your soul is aware of the events that are occurring. Your spirit knows how valuable this hour is. This alignment was meant for you since the beginning of your life. You were chosen for this unraveling. And, while the world may proclaim its verdicts, you are already aware of God's words. This is the hour for spiritual correction, divine realignment, and exposure. Additionally, God is using you as part of His response. Do not be concerned about the events that are unfolding. Do not accept the validity of every tear you see. Pain is not always unadulterated. Not all brokenness is honest. Furthermore, not every accusation is justified. Occasionally, the victim acts as the enemy's most dangerous disguise. However, the Lord is not deaf. Furthermore, He is currently acting in a manner that is both quick and clear, as well as morally sound. You will see the lies crumble one by one, day by day, as the scroll of truth begins to unfold. And when the dust settles, you'll see that this wasn't just a storm. It was a rescue. It's not too late to seek God. He never was. And despite the unusual and urgent nature of the situation, this moment is exactly on time. Heaven has not remained silent. Despite the apparent silence, God's throne has been far from inactive, hidden behind the veil of your daily life. Movements have been occurring quietly, precisely, and divinely. Angels have passed through your life, unseen but ever present. They stood at thresholds you weren't aware you were approaching. They turned the tide in your favor when it looked like everything was against you. The time for exposure has arrived, not to destroy, but to deliver. Your spirit already recognizes that something is changing. You sense the tension in the air, the pressure that exists without reason. You've noticed the conversations that ended when you arrived, as well as the glances that lingered for far too long. You have borne the weight of invisible warfare. And now, heaven is speaking clearly. It wasn't a product of your imagination. A man who was once a trusted member of your circle and had a gentle demeanor has been on a path of deception. Not all serpents can slither. Some people speak with a low voice. This person smiled with one face while concealing the other. He has sacrificed his integrity in order to gain an advantage. He believed that shadows could obscure what the heavens could clearly see. However, the Lord, who never sleeps, has seen each step because His eyes are fixed on humanity's paths, and He perceives each one. And now justice is in motion, not the justice of men alone, but that of the Almighty. Job chapter 34, verse 21. The gavel has fallen in heaven's court, not out of anger, but out of righteousness, not out of wrath, but to protect you. Conflicting emotions may emerge. This is a common occurrence when the heart has known someone in whom the spirit cannot fully trust. Even when the truth reveals a pattern, love often sees potential. However, God does not expect you to understand everything at once. He is imploring you to have faith in Him as He destroys what was never meant to be. Reports, testimonies, and whispers from hidden places are being revealed behind the scenes. Everything is under the watchful eye of God. He's revealing the truth. The words spoken in secret will reverberate in the regions where truth reigns supreme. The mask has been removed, and the reality beneath it is unmistakable. You may be wondering why it took so long and why God didn't act sooner. However, divine timing is never late or early. The vision is not yet ready for its designated time. Despite the fact that it is tar, it will almost certainly arrive. Dear chosen, one of the light, please listen carefully. Something extraordinary is currently happening. The people who took advantage of your generosity, the systems that slowed your progress, and the forces that sapped your energy are all facing their reckoning. Furthermore, the fact that you are receiving this message is not by accident. Your spirit is prepared. Your season is changing. This is the precise time you were supposed to receive this message. If you feel that resonance in your chest, that stillness, and are aware that this message is meant for you, please leave a comment. Simply enter the phrase, "Because the information I'm about to reveal will cause a change within you that has been waiting patiently for its turn." You've been carrying a significant burden, not just frustration or disappointment. You have been burdened by inequity, the kind that occurs when you operate with integrity, put forth your best effort, and still see others benefit from the foundation you have built. You kept your silence. You put your faith in the procedure. You believed that the truth would eventually be revealed and equilibrium restored. I require you to understand the following. What was taken from you was not by chance. It was meant for. They did not solely take your ideas, efforts, or resources. They took advantage of your momentum. They deprived you of your peace. They drained your confidence, which you had before discovering the calculated nature of certain people. For a short time, it appeared that they had escaped unscathed. There is no accountability, and therefore no consequences. Silence. However, silence is not the same as absence. The sound of silence frequently indicates that something legal is occurring in the background. The unseen is bound by a spiritual law that cannot be bribed, manipulated, or ignored. When an individual comes into contact with a heaven-marked object, they are not in conflict with you. They're submitting a case to a higher court. Furthermore, the court does not adhere to human timelines. It functions precisely. I will try to express this as clearly as possible. The delay you encountered was not due to neglect. It was an act of preparation. Evidence was being collected. Pattern documentation was currently underway. Motives were fully disclosed to the authority that truly matters, rather than you. The wait is finally over. Think about this for a moment. An investigation is conducted before any legitimate legal proceeding yields a judgment. The documentation is present before the sentencing. The procedure becomes more comprehensive as the gravity of the offense increases. Divine indifference was not the experience you were having. It was a divine due process. And when heaven builds a case, it builds it completely. If this speaks to you, please take a moment to click the like icon. It is not for my benefit, but rather as a show of support for the current changes that are in your favor. When you chose restraint over retaliation, you were acting in your best interests. Every time you chose to remain silent when you could have revealed someone, you were allowing heaven to operate without interference. Instead of cursing, you wept every evening. You were positioned beneath an impenetrable cover. They may have disengaged temporarily, but they did so without proper safeguards. You kept an adequate level of protection. It is essential that you understand the concept of spiritual timing. Temporary outcomes are frequently the result of rapid events. When decisions require time, the consequences are irreversible. The arrangement being made for you is not a temporary victory. This is a long-term repositioning. The foundation being built is resistant to shaking because it was not built with human labor. It is based on the concept of divine order. You've probably asked yourself, why did this take so long? Several times. Why was I compelled to witness their success year after year while I struggled with my own? This is the reason. You would not have been prepared to handle it if the reversal had occurred earlier. You would have entered the rooms with injuries that would have jeopardized the structure you had built if the doors had been opened sooner. Punishment was not the cause of the delay. It was an act of preparation. You needed time to recover in ways you didn't realize were damaged. This is not just retribution. This is not a one-on-one exchange. A complete reversal is imminent. The foundations of the structures they built on deception are deteriorating. The advantages gained through manipulation are being revoked. The doors that were opened for them due to the stolen items are now closing. And what they thought was secure is now revealed to be transitory. This is easily understandable. When discussing the concept of reaping what one sows, Scripture avoids using metaphors. It is establishing a law as reliable as gravity. It is impossible to violate it without facing consequences. They planted the seeds of larceny, manipulation, and deception. And while you waited, those seedlings grew into exposure rather than blessings. Their structure is disintegrating from the inside out, and it is happening in ways that cannot be attributed to you. Their own decisions have led to their demise. Self-inflicted consequences is a key phrase in this context. They are not under siege. The consequences of their own actions are exposing them. They built a structure that appeared stable due to the preservation of secrecy. However, secrets are not kept indefinitely. The light always detects fractures. When it occurs, the seemingly unbreakable structure disintegrates at a rapid rate. It's possible that you won't get an apology. Confessions may not be granted to you. However, you will see movement. You will witness abrupt transformations that are illogical unless viewed through the lens of divine intervention. A position becomes available that you were previously told you would not be able to pursue. Even when you are not present, a conversation shifts to another room. An alliance that seemed impervious to rupture begins to unravel. The momentum of an endeavor that excluded you abruptly slows. Pay close attention to the details. The manifestation of divine justice does not lead to the chaotic movement of heaven. It is demonstrated through the application of discipline. Your announcement will be unnecessary. It is unnecessary for you to emphasize this. Individuals will observe it independently and wonder how the situation could have changed so suddenly. Some people may inquire as to what happened, and your response will be straightforward. Externally, there was no difference. Everything underwent internal transformations. You stopped arguing and started building trust. This is not a disorder. This is the process of reestablishing order. That season was not meant to make you break. You were made to go through it in order to improve yourself. And now what is returning to you is more than just what you lost. Influence, clarity, and authority are qualities you were born with, and they don't need to be defended because they are rooted in reality. An ancient story tells of a man who built a snare for someone he envied. He dedicated time, resources, and energy to the creation of a device intended to cause destruction. However, on the morning that it was supposed to be used, the snare malfunctioned. The designer slipped into it. That was not a stroke of luck. That was a spiritual principle in action, and the same principle is currently at work in your situation. The adversary prepared a setup, but their estimation was incorrect. They were unaware that the structure they were building would be used for their own public exposure. It was never intended for you to participate in this conflict. You were expected to remain steadfast, rooted, and let God handle the legal issues. I've had personal experience with this. I've personally felt the joy of seeing someone thrive by putting their hard work to use. I understand the confusion of seeing their doors open while yours remains closed. I'm aware of those lonely nights when you relive events, wondering if you were too patient, too kind, or too trusting. Failure was not the source of the uncertainty. It was the result of integrity's efforts to understand injustice. Please take a moment to collect yourself. If you are still with me, please leave a comment containing the number 777. Allow that to act as a marker, a sign of agreement with the current situation. What was stolen from you was more than just material. It was an emotional energy. Your leisure time should have been building up in your personal life. It was the ability to trust without reservations. They did not simply capitalize on the opportunity. They accepted calm. Furthermore, it appeared that there would be no consequences for a period of time. However, the consequences aren't immediately clear. They approach. Here's what you should prepare for. Restoration is about more than just recovering what was previously lost. It entails accepting the role that was always meant for you. This indicates that certain aspects of your life are about to undergo a rapid transformation. Relationships that deplete you will eventually disintegrate. You will feel uncomfortable in environments that restrict you. Opportunities that align with your evolving identity will emerge, often without your intervention. This is something that cannot be compelled. This is an item that you acknowledge and accept. I'd like to provide a more detailed description of the appearance of genuine restoration rather than one based on emotional exaggeration. Initially, you will notice an improvement in clarity. The decisions that had previously paralyzed you will now become clear. You will be able to determine which requests to accept and which to decline without having to conduct extensive analysis. You are not putting in more effort to achieve clarity. It originates from the alignment. You will then receive an unexpected favor. Doors that you were previously unaware of will open. Resources that were unavailable last month will become available. People will contact you not because you pursued them, but because they noticed a difference in your presence. This was not an accident. This is the result of the spiritual repositioning that occurred while you waited. The third phase involves stabilizing your vitality. You've been operating in survival mode for so long that you've forgotten what it's like to be in a relaxed state. Restoration results in profound internal stability that is independent of external circumstances. You will get better sleep. And you will be able to see more clearly. The reason you will feel lighter is not that your problems have gone away, but that the burden of injustice has been lifted off your shoulders. Fourth, the impact of outdated patterns will be reduced. Conversations from the past will no longer run through your mind. You will stop monitoring their activities. You will lose interest in trying to convince anyone of anything. That's not a denial. That is liberty. Freedom is thought to be quite quiet. It settles calmly. You may begin to notice that conversations have a distinct vibe. Individuals who previously ignored you will suddenly take an interest in you. Organizations that have previously neglected you will extend invitations. Resources that were unavailable a month ago will now be available. This was not an accident. This is the process of realigning. Heaven does not restore in a silent way. It restores in a way that eliminates ambiguity about the intervener. There is no intention of elevating you in order to highlight a point. Your elevation brings about order. A table is being set up for demonstration purposes rather than retribution. Those who have questioned your integrity will change their language. Those who previously underestimated your endurance will reconsider their assessment. I'd like to discuss a specific topic in this context. Individuals from the past may resurface, not always to apologize, but to observe your current situation and responses. What you say internally is more important than what you say externally. It is unnecessary to reopen doors to show that you have recovered. Healing uses boundaries to communicate, just as forgiveness does. My personal journey has provided me with the following knowledge. Certain people will return because they see your transformation and want to take advantage of the new season. However, not all individuals who return are eligible for access. Discernment is the ability to distinguish between someone who is truly transformed and someone who is simply changing their strategy. You are not required to explain why you are keeping specific entrances closed. Forgiveness and reconciliation are distinct concepts. Forgiveness is an act of self-care. It releases you from the bonds of resentment. Reconciliation requires the recognition of two parties, genuine change, and mutual acknowledgement. It is possible to absolve an individual unconditionally while still concluding that the relationship has served its purpose and does not require revivification. That is not an indicator of toughness. This is the essence of wisdom. Keep an eye out for people who only contact you when the seasons change. Keep an eye out for people who went missing during difficult times but reappeared when things got better. Their timing reveals all of the information needed to determine their motivation. True relationships do not wait for success to show their support. They manifest themselves during a conflict. As you progress, you'll need to be ready for unexpected discomfort. Your restoration will not be celebrated by everyone. Some people were at ease with your depression because it helped them overcome their own feelings of stagnation. They are unprepared to face the challenges that your ascent will bring. They may present their distress as a cause for concern. They may express their jealousy as a form of caution. Avoid internalizing their resistance. It is completely unrelated to you and entirely dependent on the information your progress provides about their own decisions. Access is not required for forgiveness. It is permissible to forgive unconditionally and move forward without considering the events that caused you harm. That is not a state of being cold. That is the wisdom that comes from experience. As your life returns to normalcy, you may feel an unexpected sense of calm. The calm of order, rather than the silence of anticipation. Constant supervision is required in the midst of chaos. Order creates space in which creativity, inspiration, and confidence can be reactivated without having to compare oneself to others. This is one of the most significant changes you'll see. Your creativity, which may have been stifled for years, will suddenly resurface. Ideas will appear spontaneously. Solutions will appear without any anxiety. Rather than focusing on problems, you will start to consider potential solutions. That is not an example of optimistic reasoning. That is the unavoidable result of operating from a position of safety rather than survival. Non-essential functions are turned off when the nervous system is constantly in threat mode. One of these is creativity. Innovation requires a sense of security. Mental space is required for vision. Neither can thrive while in flight or combat. However, as the restoration process comes to an end, your internal system resets itself. You move from survival to prosperity. During this transition, previously dormant abilities begin to awaken. You may also notice changes in your dream state, such as an increase in your ability to envision the future. You may have felt modest in your dreams for years due to previous disappointments. You stopped allowing yourself to have grandiose fantasies because every time you did, something happened that undermined them. However, you will now have an internal sense of authorization, permission to imagine again, to desire more, and to believe that what you want is actually possible. If you notice this change, Even if it is only slightly noticeable, please share the location from which you are viewing. Enter the name of your city or country in the comments section. Divine justice isn't abstract. It occurs in real-world settings and among real people. Some of you have expressed concern that allowing yourself to savor this season will make you vulnerable again. While fear is understandable, it is not appropriate in this context. Loss is not an invitation to celebrate. Carelessness is to blame. Furthermore, you are no longer negligent. You currently have discernment. You can tell when an object is consistent with your values and when it is driven solely by egotism. With that discernment, you will protect your structures better than fear could ever do. I will confront that apprehension head-on, as it is both plausible and widespread. Being cautious around fire is a natural reaction after being burned. However, the goal is not to stop combustion indefinitely. The goal is to learn the necessary skills to use it without becoming engrossed. You do not have to endure the fear of another betrayal in order to protect yourself from one. Live in a state of wisdom. Wisdom differentiates between prudent risk and rash exposure. You remain diminutive out of fear. Wisdom not only allows you to grow, but it also protects you. The distinction is of critical importance. Fear implies that nobody should be trusted. Trust with caution suggests wisdom. Fear directs us to protect everything. Wisdom dictates that one should keep what is important and discard what isn't. Scarcity is the cause of fear. Abundance is the foundation of wisdom. You are not being asked to go back in time to prevent something from happening again. You are being asked to apply what you have learned and move forward with confidence. This is also a time when your voice will be important. Your groundedness, rather than your increased volume, is the reason. People may be interested in hearing your point of view. They may inquire as to how you kept your cool in the midst of chaos. Dramatizing your story is unnecessary. The majority of inquiries are resolved without the use of words due to your presence. In addition, I need to address a minor issue. Some of those who harmed you were unaware of the consequences of their actions. This does not absolve them. However, it reduces the burden of resentment. Resentment is a burden you do not need to carry at this time. You're moving too quickly to be slowed down by extraneous weight. As you progress, you may realize that you're redefining success. The focus is no longer solely on the outcome. The issue here is sustainability. The subject is harmony. It refers to the compatibility of one's identity and actions. That redefinition will guide your decisions more precisely than ambition ever did. Do not doubt the attraction you are experiencing right now. This is not agitation. It's a direction. You are drawn to people, places, and opportunities that are more in line with your current identity than with your past self. This may entail letting go of specific roles, routines, or relationships, not out of rage, but out of clarity. Let me discuss one aspect that is frequently overlooked in discussions about restoration stewardship. Heaven does not simply restore what was lost. You are entrusted with much more. Responsibility is a result of this, not a burden. There's a distinction. You are now entering a period in which the significance of your actions is greater than ever before, not because you are being judged by God, but because you now wield influence that extends beyond your own life. Individuals are observing you not to judge you, but to learn from you. Your choices, responses, and integrity in this new season will either confirm or contradict the message of your life. This is why the character developed while waiting. Talent has the ability to transport you to a world that character cannot sustain. Integrity is required to pass through a door that might be opened by chance. Heaven does not hasten this process, as shortcuts result in weak foundations. What you are currently receiving is more than just a blessing. It is a platform, and platforms require people who can manage their weight without becoming arrogant, and who can show favor without appearing foolish. Now that doors are opening, some of you may feel compelled to act quickly. Do not succumb to that urge. Speed does not always equate to advancement. Occasionally, the most efficient course of action is to proceed at a relaxed pace. When you rush into decisions, you are afraid of missing out. When you move in peace, you make decisions that are aligned. One causes disorder, while the other leaves a legacy. You should also be cautious about who you allow to give you advice during this season. It is not true that everyone who offers advice has your best interests at heart. Certain people give advice based on their own limitations, projecting their anxieties onto your potential. Be selective. Seek advice from people who have been in your situation before, rather than those who are still in it now. Clarity requires no explanation. Occasionally, you will be required to make decisions that appear illogical to those around you. That is acceptable. Not all maneuvers require your defense. Certain matters stand between you and heaven. Respect the sacred area. Not all matters require an announcement, explanation, or justification. Quiet confidence is a powerful force. Please let me know if this message has touched you deeply before we proceed. Subscribing allows you to stay connected to this flow, because the released content is not entirely random. It is consistent with a frequency that your spirit recognizes. Gratitude may begin to increase unexpectedly. Genuine appreciation for the lessons you learned from adversity, rather than forced gratitude. Gratitude is not an endorsement for suffering. Recognizing your progress allows you to continue in your current position without resentment. You did not squander the years. It was they who prepared you. Keep this in mind as you move forward with the restoration. You are not alone in this journey. You might be surprised by the following. You will discover that you appreciate the people who betrayed you. Not because their actions were morally correct, but because they revealed a side of you that would not have emerged otherwise. Strength you were previously unaware of. Resilience that is only developed in response to stress. Character that is solely developed through testing. They thought they were destroying you. In reality, they were helping you grow. This does not imply that you are inviting them to reintegrate into your life. This does not mean that you should downplay the actions they took. It implies that you recognize that heaven's purpose for your life is greater than any of their evil intentions. What they meant was to cause harm. For the purpose of preparation, heaven was redirected. Joseph said it. I am simply reminding you that the principle is still active. You are walking with wisdom gained, discernment sharpened, and faith that has been tried and proven. That's a rare combination. And that is why what you are building now will last. Let me speak to those of you who feel like you lost too much time. You look around and see people your age who are already established, already successful, already where you thought you would be by now. And you wonder if you can ever catch up. Here is what you need to know. You're not lagging. You are being repositioned. And when heaven repositions someone, it does not occur gradually. It occurs suddenly. A single moment can change a decade of delay. One conversation can achieve what 10 years of effort cannot. One divine introduction can be more effective than 100 networking events. No, you were not overlooked. You've been prepared. And prepared people don't climb slowly. They are launched. Let me conclude with a truth that must settle in your spirit. The reversal you've sensed is not in the future. It is in the present tense. The wheels are already in motion. Doors that were sealed are starting to open. Conversations that exclude you are being reconsidered. The systems that were preventing you from proceeding are being restructured. You are not in a state of waiting. You are currently in the process of becoming. And you're becoming someone who doesn't need to prove anything. Because the evidence of heaven's favor is visible in your movements. You may not see everything change overnight, but you'll notice signs. Small confirmations will accumulate into undeniable patterns. A phone call that alters course. An email that creates a pathway. A conversation that reconnects you with opportunity. These are not just coincidences. These are orchestrations. Pay attention to peace. Peace is the most reliable indicator that you are heading in the right direction. When something corresponds to this season, you will feel it in your body. When something does not work, you will feel resistance. Trust your internal compass. It has been reset as a result of everything you've gone through. Here is how you can tell if something is truly from this season of restoration. It will be both exciting and relaxing at the same time. Excitement without peace is typically ego. Peace without excitement is usually calming. But when both are present, you are in agreement. That combination is rare and should be celebrated when it occurs. There's one more thing. People who benefit from your rise this season will be different than in the past. These will be people who recognize your worth without having to diminish it. They will celebrate your accomplishments without feeling threatened by them. They will invest in you without attempting to control you. That shift in relational dynamics is a component of the restoration. You are not going back to old networks. You are being introduced to new people. Networks that reflect your maturity, vision, and capacity. Don't try to hold on to connections that no longer fit. Release them with grace and make room for what is right. Some of these old connections served as training grounds. They taught you what to look for and avoid. They showed you red flags that you will never ignore again. They revealed patterns that you will not tolerate again. Do not regret your connections. Honor what they taught you and move forward with wisdom. As this message comes to an end, I'd like you to take one deep breath. Feel the sensation of a weight being lifted. Notice how clarity has returned. Recognize the strength that has been rebuilt within you. You are no longer the same person you were when you first experienced loss. You're stronger, wiser, and more discerning. The enemies who robbed you are losing everything. Not because you cursed them, but because the law of heaven is clear. What they built on deception cannot last. What they gained through manipulation cannot last, and what they thought they had secured is being taken away. You are not required to monitor their fall. You should concentrate on your rise. Keep your gaze forward. Keep your spirit calm and believe that what is happening is exactly what was meant to happen. Let me emphasize this once more because it is important. You were not the victim of a random occurrence. You were the target of a strategic attack. Your enemy did not realize, however, that targeting someone who is protected by heaven does not weaken them. It activates a level of defense and recompense that is far beyond what human effort could ever achieve. They chose the wrong one. And they're learning that lesson in irreversible ways. Please let me know if this word has strengthened your faith. comment Amen, or use a heart emoji. Allow this to be a moment of agreement between your spirit and the truth you've just received. You are standing at your appointed time. The season of restoration is not approaching. It is present. Walk in with confidence. Walk in with peace. And walk into it knowing that heaven has already prepared the way. Go in with strength. The reversal is active. The blessing has been released. Everything your spirit has sensed is about to be confirmed in ways you can see, touch, and feel. This is your opportunity. Don't doubt it. Do not postpone it. Step into it fully, knowing that you are protected, guided, and favored. The table is set. The doors are opening. And what happens next will leave no doubt about who defended you. Maintain your loyalty. Stay focused. And see what happens when heaven acts on your behalf. We ascend in the direction of the sun.